The human ship moved slowly through space toward the massive station ahead. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the structure grow larger on the viewing screen. Beside him sat Max, a large German shepherd with dark brown eyes and black and tan fur. The dog's ears perked up as if he could sense his human's nervousness. "We're being hailed by the station, sir," said Amy Holland from the communications panel. She was young, barely 25, with red hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls. "Open the channel," Jake replied. He straightened his uniform and put his hand on Max's head. The touch calmed him like it always did. A face appeared on the screen. It was reptilian, with green scales and large yellow eyes. The creature's mouth moved in what might have been a smile, though it was hard to tell. "Welcome to Turda Station, humans. I am Ambassador Velkoth of the Saurian delegation. We have been expecting you." "Thank you, Ambassador," Jake said. "We're honored to be here. Please dock at Bay 7. A guide will meet you there." The reptilian's eyes moved down, and Jake knew he was looking at Max. "Is that creature with you?" "This is Max. He's my dog." "He goes where I go." There was a pause. "I see. We will discuss this matter later." Velkoth out. The screen went dark. Amy turned in her chair. "That didn't sound good." "It never does at first," said Danny West, the security officer. He was a big man with short black hair and kind eyes. "They'll get used to us." "They always do." The ship docked smoothly and the crew prepared to disembark. Besides Jake, Amy, and Danny, there was Dr. Lisa Grant, a scientist who specialized in alien biology. She was in her 40s with gray starting to show in her brown hair and glasses that slipped down her nose when she got excited. "Remember," Lisa said as they gathered near the airlock, "most of these species have never seen a dog before. Try not to react to their reactions." Max walked beside Jake as the airlock opened. The station's air smelled different, cleaner somehow, with a faint metallic tang. The corridor beyond was huge, built for species of all sizes. The walls glowed with a soft blue light. A group of aliens waited for them. Jake recognized Velkoth from the screen. Next to him stood an insect-like creature, tall and thin with multiple arms and eyes that seemed to look in several directions at once. Behind them was something that looked almost like a person, but its skin glowed faintly and its eyes were solid white with no pupils. "Welcome," Velkoth said. "Allow me to introduce my colleagues. This is Chirix of the Vextar and High Administrator Zar-El of the Luminari." The insect creature clicked its mandibles. "So these are the humans, and they brought livestock with them." Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice calm. "Max is not livestock. He's a companion and a member of my crew." "How curious," Zar-El said in a voice like wind chimes. "You assign rank to animals. We'll explain everything during the orientation." Lisa cut in smoothly. "There's quite a bit of history behind human and canine relationships." The tour of the station took 3 hours. They saw the main council chamber where representatives from 40 different species made decisions that affected billions of lives. They visited the science laboratories, the living quarters, and the diplomatic suites. Everywhere they went, aliens stopped to stare at Max. Some pointed. Some laughed. Others moved away quickly as if the dog might be dangerous. Max handled it all with calm dignity. He stayed close to Jake, occasionally sniffing the air or looking up at his human for reassurance. When children of various species came near out of curiosity, Max sat down and let them look at him from a safe distance. That evening, there was a formal dinner in the diplomatic hall. The humans sat at a long table with representatives from a dozen species. The food was strange, specially prepared to be safe for human consumption, but tasting like nothing Jake had ever eaten before. "Tell me," Chirix said loudly from across the table, "why do you humans insist on keeping these beasts? Is it because you need protection? Are you too weak to defend yourselves?" Several aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. Jake felt Danny tense beside him. "Dogs and humans have lived together for over 30,000 years, Lisa explained patiently. They were our partners in hunting and farming and exploring new territories. The relationship shaped both species, but why keep them now?" asked a bear-like creature named Grondar. He was covered in brown fur and had small, cruel eyes. "Surely you have machines that can do whatever these animals do." "It's not about function," Amy said quietly. "It's about companionship, about love." The word seemed to make several aliens uncomfortable. Zar-El's glowing face showed no expression, but her voice was cold when she spoke. "Love is an inefficient emotional response. Most advanced species have learned to suppress such primitive instincts. Jake looked down at Max, who was lying quietly beside his chair. The dog's eyes were half closed, relaxed despite being surrounded by strange creatures. Jake remembered other times, harder times, when that calm presence had been the only thing keeping him sane. "With respect, Administrator," Jake said, "I disagree. Love isn't primitive. It's one of the things that makes us strong." Strong? Chirix clicked his mandibles in what was clearly amusement. Emotional attachment is weakness. It clouds judgment. It makes you vulnerable. Maybe, Danny said, his voice hard, but it also gives us something to fight for. The dinner continued awkwardly after that. When it finally ended, Velkoth approached Jake privately. "Commander Morrison, several delegates have expressed concerns about your animal attending official functions. They find it unsanitary and inappropriate." Jake's hand went to Max's head. "He's not just an animal ambassador. He's saved my life. He's a hero." "That may be true in human terms," Velkoth said, not unkindly, "but this is not a human station. We must respect the concerns of all species present. I'm afraid I must ask that your dog remain in your quarters during future diplomatic sessions." Back in their assigned rooms, Jake sat on the floor with Max. The dog put his head on Jake's knee and sighed deeply. Amy knocked and entered without waiting for an answer. "You okay?" she asked. "They don't understand," Jake said. "They look at Max and see a pet, a thing. They don't see the bond." Amy sat down beside them. "My family had a golden retriever when I was growing up, Scout. He died when I was 16. Her voice got quiet. "I still miss him. He understood me better than most people did." "That's exactly it," Jake said. "That understanding. That connection. How do you explain that to beings who've never felt it?" "Maybe we can't," Amy said. "Maybe they just have to see it to believe it." Outside the window, the station rotated slowly, and beyond it, stars stretched endlessly into the dark. Somewhere out there was Earth, home to billions of humans and their animal companions. Jake wondered what would happen if the Council decided humans weren't worthy of membership. Would humanity be alone among the stars, forever separate because they loved creatures that others considered beneath notice? Max shifted, pressing closer to Jake's side. In that moment, feeling the warmth and weight of his dog, Jake knew one thing for certain. Whatever the Council decided, whatever challenges lay ahead, he would never apologize for this bond. Some things were worth more than acceptance. Some things were worth more than the stars themselves. 3 weeks had passed since the humans arrived at Turtis Station, and the routine had become familiar. Each morning, Jake woke to find Max already awake, watching him with patient brown eyes. They would go through their morning routine together. Then Jake would head to the endless diplomatic meetings while Max stayed behind in their quarters. It was the part of each day that Jake hated. Most Danny had taken on the job of exercising Max during the long hours when Jake was occupied. The security officer would arrive mid-morning and take the dog for walks through the limited areas where Max was permitted. These were mostly cargo sections and maintenance corridors, far from the important diplomatic areas. "He's getting restless," Danny reported one afternoon. "Cooped up like this isn't good for him. Dogs need space to run, things to do." "I know," Jake said tiredly. The negotiations were moving slowly. Every decision had to be approved by multiple committees, and there were always delegates who objected to human involvement. "But what choice do we have?" "You could have left him on Earth," Amy pointed out. She was working on her datapad, preparing reports to send home. Jake looked at her sharply. "I've been away from Earth for 2 years on this mission. Would you leave your family behind for that long?" Amy's expression softened. "No, I guess I wouldn't." The diplomatic sessions continued to be frustrating. Jake found himself in endless debates about human history, human culture, and human intentions. Chirix seemed to find fault with everything humanity had ever done. The insect alien brought up Earth's wars, its environmental damage, its tendency toward emotional decision-making. "Your species is too chaotic," Chirix declared during one session. "You fight among yourselves constantly. You make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. You attach yourselves to inferior life forms. These are not the qualities of a species ready for galactic community." "Every species has conflicts," Lisa argued. She had become their primary spokesperson during these debates, her scientific mind better suited to the logical arguments the aliens preferred. "The question isn't whether we've made mistakes. It's whether we learn from them." "And what have you learned?" Zarel asked, her white eyes unblinking. You still maintain armies. You still have nations that compete rather than cooperate. You still waste resources on creatures that serve no productive purpose. The conversation always seemed to circle back to Max, to the concept of pets, to what the aliens saw as humanity's greatest weakness. Jake noticed that Velkoth rarely joined these attacks, but the Saurian ambassador didn't defend them either. Behind the scenes, things were getting worse. Danny reported increased surveillance of the human quarters. Station security, mostly made up of Krell like Grondar, seemed to be watching them constantly. Twice, Danny had caught Krell guards trying to enter their rooms without authorization. "They're looking for something to use against us," Danny said during a private meeting in Jake's quarters. Max lay between them, his head raised and alert. "Grondar wants us gone. He's looking for an excuse." "Then we don't give him one," Jake said firmly. "We follow every rule, no matter how stupid. We smile and nod and show them that humans can be diplomatic." But the pressure was building, and all of them could feel it. Amy grew quieter, spending more time in her room. Lisa threw herself into her work, compiling detailed reports on Earth biology that no one seemed interested in reading. Danny checked his security equipment obsessively, sure that something bad was coming. The one bright spot was an unexpected friendship. Peltic, a young Saurian researcher, had started visiting Lisa in the science laboratories. Unlike most of the aliens on the station, he seemed genuinely curious about humans rather than judgmental. "I don't understand the relationship you describe with these dogs," he admitted one day. "In Saurian culture, we keep animals for food or labor. The concept of keeping one solely for companionship makes no logical sense to me." "It doesn't have to make logical sense," Lisa explained. "Some of the best things in life don't. The bond between humans and dogs is about emotion, about connection. It's about having another living being who's always happy to see you, who doesn't judge you, who loves you unconditionally." Peltic's head tilted in the way Saurians showed confusion. "But the animal cannot reason. It cannot hold complex thoughts. How can it love?" Lisa smiled. "Maybe it's a different kind of love. Simpler but no less real. Dogs don't love us because we're smart or successful. They love us because we're theirs and they're ours. There's something beautiful in that simplicity." The young Saurian seemed to consider this. "May I meet your commander's dog someday? I would like to observe this relationship myself." "I'll ask him," Lisa promised. The incident happened on a Tuesday by Earth reckoning. Amy had been granted special permission to take Max to one of the station's biodomes, large enclosed gardens where various species grew plants from their homeworlds. It was supposed to be a rare treat, a chance for Max to experience something other than metal corridors and small rooms. Danny had wanted to go with her, but Jake needed him in a security briefing. Amy assured them she would be fine. The biodome was supposed to be empty during that time slot, reserved for the human delegation's use. But when Amy entered the biodome with Max on his leash, she found 3 Krell waiting inside. They were large, covered in brown fur with small eyes and large teeth. One of them was Krentok, one of Grondar's closest assistants. "This area is reserved," Amy said, keeping her voice steady despite the sudden fear in her chest. Max pressed against her leg, sensing her distress. "We're conducting a security inspection," Krentok growled. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "I have authorization to be here," Amy said. She held up her data pad, showing the permission. The 3 Krell moved closer, surrounding her. They weren't touching her, but they were violating her personal space in a way that was clearly threatening. Their body language, the way they loomed over her, was unmistakable. Max's posture changed. The dog moved in front of Amy, his body tense. A low growl started in his chest, a warning. "Your animal is aggressive," Krentok said, but there was satisfaction in his voice. He wanted this confrontation. He had planned it. "He's protecting me because you're being threatening," Amy said. Her heart was pounding. "Please step back." Instead, Krentok stepped forward. He raised his large paw as if to push Amy. It was the wrong move. Max had been trained in military protocols. He knew what a threat looked like, and he knew what his job was. The dog launched himself at Krentok with a speed that surprised the large alien. 70 pounds of muscle and protective fury hit the Krell's arm. Max's jaws clamped down, not hard enough to tear but firm enough to stop the attack. The Krell stumbled backward, roaring in surprise and pain. The other 2 Krell moved to help their companion, but Danny West appeared in the biodome entrance. The security officer had followed Amy at a distance. not trusting the situation despite the official permissions. His weapon was drawn. "Everyone freeze," Danny ordered, his voice carrying the authority of years of training. "Stand down now." "Max, release," Amy commanded, her voice shaking but clear. Immediately, the dog let go of Krentak's arm and returned to Amy's side. He sat down next to her, alert and ready but under control. The Krell's arm was bleeding, the bite marks clear on his fur. Krentak held it against his chest, his small eyes filled with rage. "That beast attacked me. It must be destroyed." "You were threatening a member of my crew," Danny said coldly. The dog acted in defense. "Now all of you get out of here before I file charges for assault." The Krell left, but everyone knew this wasn't over. Within an hour, alarms were blaring throughout the human section of the station. Security teams arrived to seal off their quarters, and a message came from the council. There would be an emergency hearing. The charges were simple and devastating. Max was to be declared a dangerous animal and destroyed, and humanity's application for council membership was to be denied, based on their inability to control their creatures and their tendency toward violence. Jake stood in his quarters with Max beside him. Danny and Amy and Lisa gathered around. Outside, he could hear the station security taking up positions. His hand rested on Max's head, and the dog looked up at him with trusting eyes. "They want to take him," Jake said quietly. "They want to kill him and use it as an excuse to reject humanity." "We have the security footage," Lisa said. "It clearly shows the Krell were threatening Amy. Do you think that matters?" Amy asked, her voice bitter. "They've already made up their minds about us. About Max. This is just the excuse they were looking for." Jake looked around at his crew, these people who had become family during 2 years in space. Then he looked down at Max, this dog who had saved his life, who asked for nothing but companionship and gave everything in return. "Then we fight," Jake said. "We make them hear us. We make them understand, and we don't let them turn Max into a monster when he's a hero." Danny nodded. "What do you need from me?" "Gather every piece of evidence we have. Every recording, every interaction. We're going to show them exactly what happened and why." Lisa adjusted her glasses. "I'll prepare scientific testimony about dog behavior and training. We can prove Max acted appropriately given the circumstances." Amy's hand trembled as she reached down to pet Max. "I'll tell them the truth, that he saved me." The council chamber was built to impress and intimidate. It rose in circular tiers, with seats for representatives from 40 species arranged in ascending rings. The architecture created a natural amphitheater, with acoustics that carried every word to every corner. At the bottom, in the center, stood a small platform where the accused were meant to stand. Jake Morrison stood there now, with Max sitting calmly beside him. The dog's presence was a small comfort in this vast space filled with alien beings, most of whom looked down at them with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. Amy and Danny stood behind them, along with Lisa. They had been given permission to attend as witnesses, but only Jake and Max were allowed on the central platform. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. One human and one dog facing the judgment of the galaxy. High Administrator Zar-El called the session to order. Her voice echoed through the chamber like crystal bells. "We are here to address the incident that occurred in Biodome 7 3 days ago. The charges are serious. A creature brought to this station by the human delegation attacked and injured a council security officer. We must determine if this animal poses a danger to station inhabitants and whether the humans are responsible for this breach of safety." Chirix rose from his seat. The insect alien had volunteered to present the case against Max and the humans. He seemed to take pleasure in the role. "Members of the council," Chirix began, his mandibles clicking with each word. "What we witnessed 3 days ago was not an isolated incident. It was the inevitable result of allowing humans to bring dangerous predators into civilized space. These creatures, these dogs, are descended from wolves. They are hunters, killers, and the humans have attempted to domesticate them, but as we saw, that domestication is incomplete." The chamber's screens lit up, showing security footage of the incident. But the footage had been edited. It started with Max's attack on Krentak, showing it in slow motion. The dog's teeth were bared. His body was a blur of motion. The Krell's blood was visible where Max's jaws had gripped his arm. It looked brutal. It looked vicious. And that was exactly what Chirix wanted. "Look at this violence," Chirix continued. "This is what happens when humans bring their pets into our midst. Today it was Security Officer Krentok who was injured. Tomorrow it could be anyone. A scientist, a diplomat, a child visiting with their parents. Are we willing to take that risk? Several delegates made sounds of agreement. Jake saw Grondar in his seat, his bear-like face showing satisfaction. This was going exactly as planned. Krentok was brought forward to testify. The Krell's arm was bandaged heavily, though medical reports had shown the injury was minor. He described the incident in terms that made Max sound like a monster, and himself like an innocent victim doing his job. I approached the human female to verify her authorization to be in the biodome. Krentok said. Without warning, the beast attacked me. I had made no threatening moves. I had simply been performing my duties as a security officer. Did you fear for your life? Chirix asked. Yes, Krentok said without hesitation. The creature was out of control. If others had not arrived, it might have killed me. It was a lie, but it was a lie told confidently before the entire council. Jake felt his fists clench. Beside him, Max remained calm, occasionally glancing up at his human as if to ask what all the fuss was about. Danny West was called to testify next. He walked to the platform with military precision and described what he had seen when he entered the biodome. His words were careful, factual, leaving no room for emotion. I observed 3 Krell officers surrounding Amy Holland in what appeared to be an intimidating formation. Their body language was aggressive. When I arrived, Officer Krentok had his arm raised toward Amy in a striking position. That was when Max acted to defend her. You saw the dog attack first, though, correct? Chirix pressed. You did not see what led up to that moment. No, Danny admitted. But I saw enough to understand the context. So you're speculating, Chirix said dismissively. You saw violence and you're creating a narrative to justify it. Danny's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. He was dismissed and Amy was called forward. She looked small standing on the platform alone, young and frightened, but when she spoke, her voice was steady. They were threatening me, she said simply. I could feel it. The way they moved, the way they surrounded me. I asked them to step back and they moved closer. When Krentok raised his hand toward me, I thought he was going to hit me. Max thought so too. He was protecting me because that's what he's trained to do. That's what he's bred to do. That's who he is. The creature is trained to attack? Zarel asked, her white eyes focusing on Amy. He's trained to protect, Amy corrected. There's a difference. Max didn't continue the attack. The moment I told him to release, he did. Immediately. If he was a vicious animal out of control, he wouldn't have stopped. But he did because he's disciplined and good and he was just doing his job. Chirix dismissed her testimony as emotional bias. Lisa was called next and she presented scientific data about dog behavior, training, and the human-canine bond. She explained bite inhibition, the way dogs are capable of controlling the force of their bite. She showed medical scans proving that Max had not used anywhere near his full jaw strength on Krentok. This indicates restraint, Lisa argued. Even in a defensive situation, Max was holding back. He wasn't trying to injure severely. He was trying to stop a threat, but Chirix had prepared for this. He brought in a Vextar zoologist who had studied predators from a dozen worlds. The zoologist described dogs as potentially dangerous animals that retained many characteristics of their wolf ancestors. The testimony was technically accurate but deeply misleading, focusing only on capability rather than behavior or training. The morning session ended with the case against Max looking strong. During the recess, Jake and his crew retreated to a small waiting room. Max drank water from a bowl that Danny had brought and lay down, apparently unconcerned by the proceedings around him. This isn't going well, Amy said quietly. They're not interested in the truth, Danny said bitterly. They just want an excuse to reject us. Then we give them a truth they can't ignore, Jake said. He had been quiet all morning, watching and listening. Now he stood up, his decision made. When we go back in there, I'm going to tell them about us. About Max and me. About what this bond really means. Lisa looked worried. Jake, emotional appeals might not work with this audience. They've already made it clear they view emotions as weakness. Maybe, Jake acknowledged. But it's all we have left. Facts and logic aren't reaching them because they don't want to be reached. Maybe a story will. The afternoon session began with Jake Morrison taking the platform alone. Max was still beside him, but this time Jake didn't stand at attention like a military officer. He stood like a man talking to friends, his hand resting on his dog's head. "I want to tell you about the worst day of my life," Jake began. His voice carried through the chamber, quiet but clear. "It was 4 years ago. I was serving in a human military unit on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. We were providing security for a mining colony. There was an accident, a massive one. Part of the colony's dome collapsed. The chamber had gone silent. Even Chirix had stopped moving. I was caught in the collapse, buried under ice-reinforced concrete in temperatures that would kill a human in hours. I was hurt, couldn't move, and no one knew where I was. The radio was dead. I had no way to call for help. I thought I was going to die there, alone in the dark and cold." Jake's voice didn't waver, but Amy could see the pain in his eyes as he relived the memory. "But I wasn't alone. Max was with me. He had been knocked clear by the collapse, could have run to safety. Instead, he dug through the rubble to get to me. Found me in the dark, and then he did something incredible. He lay down next to me, pressed his body against mine to share his warmth. And he barked. For 16 hours straight, he barked as loud as he could, guiding the rescue teams to our location." Max looked up at Jake, as if he remembered that day too. "By the time they found us, I had severe hypothermia. The medics said another hour and I would have died. But Max had kept me warm enough, just barely. He saved my life. And do you know what his reward was? Not food or recognition or anything tangible. His reward was that I survived. That was enough for him." Jake looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from across the galaxy. "You call this weakness. You call it primitive. You mock us for loving creatures you consider beneath you. But I ask you this, would any of you do what Max did? Would you risk your life for someone who couldn't offer you anything in return except companionship? Would you give everything for a bond that has no practical value?" The chamber remained silent. Jake's words hung in the air like a challenge. Max attacked Krentok because in that moment he saw his human in danger. Every instinct, every bit of training, every ounce of loyalty in his body told him to protect her. And when she was safe, when she gave the command, he stopped immediately. Because he's not a monster. He's a good dog who did exactly what he's supposed to do. Jake's hand moved through Max's fur, the gesture unconscious and comforting. "You want to kill him for that. You want to punish loyalty and courage and love. You want to judge humanity based on our bonds with—" After Jake's testimony, High Administrator Zarel called for a recess. The council needed time to deliberate. The humans were escorted back to their quarters and told they would be summoned when a decision had been reached. No one could tell them how long that would take. 3 days passed. 3 long days where Jake and his crew were confined to a small section of the station, waiting while their fate was decided by beings who had never felt what it meant to love a dog. Jake spent most of his time with Max, taking comfort in the dog's steady presence. Max seemed to understand that something important was happening, but he didn't understand worry or fear the way humans did. He was content to be with his human, to rest his head on Jake's knee, to exist in the moment. "I envy him sometimes," Jake said to Danny on the second day. They were sitting in the common area of their quarters, a small space with furniture designed for multiple species and comfortable for none. "He doesn't think about tomorrow, doesn't worry about what might happen. He just lives right now, and right now he's with me, so he's happy." Danny nodded. "Dogs are better than us in some ways. They figured out what matters and never forgot it." Amy was struggling more. She blamed herself for the situation, for letting Max defend her, for not being stronger. Lisa spent hours trying to convince her that none of this was her fault, that the Krell had set a trap and they had simply walked into it. They wanted this confrontation, Lisa explained for the 10th time. If it hadn't been in the biodome, it would have been somewhere else. They were determined to find a reason to reject humanity, and our relationship with dogs gave them an easy target. "But Max could die because of me," Amy said, her voice breaking. "That good dog could be killed because he tried to protect me." Max, hearing his name, walked over to Amy and put his head in her lap. He looked up at her with his brown eyes and his tail wagged slowly. The message was clear. He didn't regret protecting her. He would do it again. Amy buried her face in Max's fur and cried. While the humans waited, the council chamber was alive with debate. The deliberations were supposed to be private, but information leaked out through various channels. Peltic, the young Saurian researcher, risked his career to keep Lisa informed of what was happening. "It's divided," Peltic said during a secret meeting in one of the science laboratories. Many delegates were moved by Commander Morrison's testimony. Others found it exactly what they feared, proof that humans make decisions based on emotion rather than logic. "What about Chirix?" Lisa asked. "He's organizing opposition. He argues that allowing humans into the council would set a dangerous precedent. If we accept a species that values emotional bonds over efficiency, what does that say about our standards?" "And Velkoth?" Peltic's expression was harder to read on his reptilian features, but Lisa had learned to interpret the small movements. He was troubled. "Ambassador Velkoth is conflicted. He respects the humans, I think, but he also serves the council. He won't vote based on personal feelings." Lisa thanked Peltic for the information and returned to their quarters. She shared what she had learned with the others, and they tried to guess which way the council would lean. But it was impossible to know. On the third day, something unexpected began to happen. Station workers and low-level staff members started approaching the human quarters. They came in ones and twos asking to speak with the humans to meet Max. A Saurian maintenance worker came first. Her name was Telina, and she worked in the environmental systems. She had met Jake weeks earlier during an emergency repair, and had been impressed by how he had helped her fix a plasma conduit without hesitation. Working alongside her despite the difference in their species. "I told others about this," Telina explained in her halting English. "How you treated me as equal. How you not act superior like many species do. Some of us have been talking. We think Council is wrong about humans." A Vextar food service worker came next, bringing a plate of carefully prepared food that was safe for human consumption. She spoke to Amy, asking about her children back home. Amy, surprised, shared stories about her nieces. The Vextar listened carefully, then said something that stuck with Amy. "You think about family even when separated by stars. This is not weakness. This is strong love. My people forgot this long ago. We are less for forgetting." More came throughout the day. They brought small gifts, words of support, and something the humans hadn't felt since arriving at the station: hope. The most surprising visitor came that evening. A Luminari woman arrived with her child, a young girl whose skin glowed with the soft light characteristic of her species. The woman introduced herself as Larna, and she had a confession to make. 2 weeks ago, my daughter and I were lost in the station corridors. We found ourselves near your quarters. Your dog was there outside with the security officer. My daughter was frightened. She had never seen such a creature. Jake listened, Max sitting beside him as always, but your dog, Max, he sat down. He did not approach. He simply sat and waited. My daughter's fear turned to curiosity. She approached him slowly, and he let her touch him. He was so gentle. She laughed when he licked her hand. The Luminari child, who had been hiding behind her mother, peeked out. She looked at Max and smiled, a shy expression that needed no translation. "I have told this story to High Administrator Zarel. She is my sister. I do not know if it will matter, but I wanted her to know, and I wanted to thank your dog for being kind to my daughter." After they left, Jake looked at Danny. "Do you think it will help?" "I don't know," Danny said honestly, "but at least we're not alone anymore." Inside the council chamber, the debates had grown heated. Chirix and his faction pushed hard for rejecting humanity and, as they put it, removing the dangerous animal from the station. Grondar and his Krell supporters were equally vocal, but other voices were rising too. Delegates who had been quiet before began speaking up. They talked about the station workers' testimonies. They discussed the security footage that had been presented in full, not just the edited version Chirix had shown, which clearly revealed the Krell's threatening behavior. Velkoth, who had remained mostly neutral, finally spoke. "I have studied the humans these past weeks. I have observed their interactions with each other and with others on this station. What I have seen is a species capable of great compassion alongside great strength. Commander Morrison's bond with his dog is not a weakness. It is evidence of a capacity for loyalty that many of our species have lost." "Sentiment," Chirix hissed. "We are being swayed by sentiment rather than logic. Is logic without compassion truly superior?" Peltic asked, speaking up despite his junior status. "We call ourselves advanced, but what have we advanced toward? Efficiency, yes. Technology, certainly. But have we grown in wisdom? In understanding of what makes life worth living?" The young Saurian's words created a stir. Several older delegates looked offended that someone so junior would speak so boldly. But others nodded slowly, considering. High Administrator Zarel had been silent throughout most of the deliberations. She listened to all sides, her glowing face expressionless, but now she raised her hand for silence and the chamber obeyed. "My sister came to me yesterday," Zarel said quietly. "She told me about an encounter her daughter had with a human dog. How this creature showed gentleness to a child who was afraid. How it demonstrated patience and kindness to a being that was nothing to it." The chamber was perfectly still. I dismissed this story at first as unimportant, but I have thought about it constantly since. When did we Luminari last show such patience with those who fear us? When did we last consider the feelings of a child who is not our own? Zarel paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried centuries of weariness. We pride ourselves on having evolved beyond emotion, beyond the primitive bonds that we believe hold species back. But perhaps what we call evolution is actually loss. Perhaps we have traded something essential for something merely efficient. A murmur ran through the council. Zarel, the most logical and cold of all council members, was questioning the very foundations of galactic civilization. "I do not know if the humans are ready for full council membership," Zarel continued. "But I know this. Their dog acted to protect its human from perceived danger, then stopped immediately when commanded. This shows not savagery but discipline, training, trust, and these qualities matter." Chirix began to object, but Zarel cut him off with a gesture. "I am not finished. We must also consider that Security Officer Krentok and his companions were where they should not have been, doing what they should not have done. The investigation has revealed that they were ordered to create an incident by those who opposed human membership for political reasons." Grondar rose from his seat, his bear-like face angry. "This is conspiracy thinking. You have no proof." "We have communications," Velkoth said, standing as well. "We have testimony from others who were aware of the plan." "The truth is known, Grondar. You orchestrated this incident hoping to destroy human chances for membership. Instead, you have demonstrated why we need fresh perspectives on this council." The session dissolved into chaos. Delegates argued loudly in a dozen languages. Accusations flew back and forth. And in the center of it all, Zarel sat calmly, waiting for the storm to pass. Finally, she called for order. The council chamber filled early on the morning of the fourth day. Every delegate was present, along with observers from across the station. Word had spread that today's decision would be historic one way or another. The humans would either be welcomed into the galactic community or rejected because of their bond with animals. Jake stood once again on the central platform with Max beside him. Amy, Danny, and Lisa stood in the designated area for witnesses. All of them had barely slept. Jake's hand rested on Max's head, drawing strength from the contact. The dog sat calmly, occasionally looking up at his human as if to say everything would be fine. High Administrator Zarel called the session to order. Her glowing face was as unreadable as ever, but there was something different in her voice. Something that might have been emotion, though that seemed impossible for a Luminari. "We have deliberated for 3 days, Zarel began. "We have heard testimony, reviewed evidence, and discussed the deeper questions raised by this incident. The charges were simple, that the dog Max is dangerous and that humans are unfit for council membership. But the questions these charges raised are not simple at all." The chamber was silent. Jake felt his heart pounding. "First, the matter of the dog. We have reviewed all footage from the incident, including portions that were not initially presented to this council. It is clear that Security Officer Krentok and his companions created a threatening situation. The dog's response was defensive, not aggressive. Furthermore, the dog ceased his actions immediately when commanded, demonstrating training and control." Chirix shifted in his seat, his mandibles clicking in what might have been frustration. "There is also the matter of intent. Investigation has revealed that certain members of this council conspired to create an incident that would reflect poorly on the humans. This is a serious breach of council ethics and will be addressed separately, but it means we must acknowledge that this situation was manufactured to serve a political agenda." Grondar stood abruptly. "I object to these baseless accusations." "Your objection is noted and overruled," Zarel said coldly. "The evidence is substantial and has been reviewed by independent investigators. You will have your own hearing in due course." The Krell delegate stormed out of the chamber, followed by several of his supporters. Their exit was noted by all, and Jake felt a small spark of hope. Regarding the dog Max, Zarel continued, this council finds no grounds for the charge of dangerous behavior. The animal acted appropriately given the circumstances. The charges are dismissed. Jake felt his knees weaken with relief. Max was safe. Whatever else happened, his dog would live, but Zarel wasn't finished. However, this incident has forced us to confront larger questions about humanity and their place in our community. The human's attachment to animals, specifically to dogs, has been presented as evidence of their primitiveness, their emotional instability, their unsuitability for advanced civilization. Here it comes, Jake thought. They're going to say we're too emotional, too attached, too different. I have spent considerable time thinking about this argument, Zarel said, about what it means to be civilized, about what we have gained in our evolution and what we may have lost. She paused, and in that pause the entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. The Luminari achieved spaceflight 7,000 years ago. We have spread across dozens of worlds. We have mastered technologies that bend reality itself. We consider ourselves among the most advanced species in known space. And yet, when my sister told me about her daughter's encounter with the human dog, I felt something I have not felt in centuries. I felt envy. A murmur ran through the delegates. Luminari did not express such emotions publicly. We gave up companion animals generations ago. We decided they were inefficient, unnecessary, a waste of resources. We prided ourselves on this decision, on our ability to move beyond such primitive needs. But watching Commander Morrison with his dog, hearing his story about loyalty that defied logic, I wondered, did we give up something precious? Did we mistake loss for progress? Zarel's white eyes swept across the chamber. Many species represented here have made similar choices. We have eliminated bonds we deemed inefficient. We have streamlined our emotions, our relationships, our very lives in pursuit of advancement. And we have achieved great things. But at what cost? Velkoth stood. High Administrator, are you suggesting we were wrong to evolve beyond such attachments? I am suggesting, Zarel said carefully, that perhaps we should reconsider what evolution means. Is it simply the acquisition of technology and the suppression of emotion? Or is there another path? One that includes both advancement and connection? One that values efficiency without discarding the bonds that make life meaningful? She turned to face Jake directly. Commander Morrison asked us if we would do what his dog did, if we would sacrifice for a bond that had no practical value. I have asked myself this question repeatedly, and I realize that most of us in this chamber would not. We have structured our entire civilizations around the principle that such bonds are weakness. But what if we are wrong? Chirix could contain himself no longer. This is absurd. We are allowing sentiment to override millennia of logical development. The humans are emotional. They are chaotic. They attach themselves to inferior creatures. These are facts, not opinions. Yes, Zarel agreed, surprising everyone. These are facts. But we have been interpreting them incorrectly. The humans are emotional, but their emotions drive them to incredible acts of courage and compassion. They are chaotic, but their chaos breeds creativity and innovation. They attach themselves to other species, but those attachments demonstrate a capacity for loyalty and love that most of us have forgotten. She stood, her glowing form seeming brighter than usual. I move that we not only dismiss the charges against the dog Max, but also grant humanity provisional associate membership in the Galactic Council. Furthermore, I propose that we establish a cultural exchange program where council members can learn about human-animal bonds and consider whether our own societies might benefit from reconnecting with aspects of our nature we abandoned long ago. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted their support or opposition. Chirix and his remaining supporters protested loudly. But slowly, a clear majority began to emerge. Species that had remained quiet during the debates now spoke up, many echoing Zarel's sentiments. Peltic stood, his young voice somehow carrying over the noise. The Saurian delegation supports this motion. We have observed the humans closely. Their emotional bonds do not make them weak. They make them strong in ways we have not considered. We would be foolish to reject them for displaying qualities we should envy rather than despise. One by one, other delegates stood to voice their support. Not all of them, but enough. The tide had turned. Velkoth called for a formal vote. The results were displayed on the chamber's main screen. 32 delegates voted in favor of granting humanity provisional membership. 8 voted against. The measure passed. Jake felt tears streaming down his face. Amy was crying openly, and even Danny's eyes were suspiciously bright. Lisa had her hand over her mouth, shock and joy warring on her features. But there was more. Zarael raised her hand for silence once again. There is one additional matter. Several delegates have expressed concern about humans bringing companion animals into council space. Some feel it sets a dangerous precedent. Jake's joy dimmed. Were they going to ban dogs from the station after all? Therefore, Zarael continued, I propose we establish clear guidelines for companion animals in council space. These guidelines will ensure safety while respecting the bonds between species. Humans will be permitted to bring their companion animals, including dogs, to council facilities. Other species who wish to explore similar relationships will be supported in doing so. She looked at Jake, and for the first time, her expression seemed almost warm. Commander Morrison, your dog will not only be permitted on this station but welcomed. He has taught us all something valuable today. The session concluded with formal ceremonies that Jake barely remembered afterward. He was surrounded by well-wishers, by delegates who wanted to meet Max, by species he had never interacted with before expressing genuine interest in humanity and Earth. Peltic was ecstatic. I am approved for the exchange program. I will visit Earth in 3 months. I want to meet more dogs. I want to understand this bond. You're welcome any time, Jake told him warmly. I think you'll love it. That evening, the human crew gathered in their quarters for a private celebration. They had done it. Against all odds, despite the manipulation and prejudice, they had succeeded. Humanity had a place among the stars. I still can't believe it, Amy said. She was sitting on the floor with Max, who had his head in her lap. We were sure they were going to reject us. They almost did, Lisa said. If Zarael hadn't questioned everything, if those station workers hadn't spoken up, if Max hadn't been exactly the good dog he is, this could have gone very differently. Danny raised his glass of water in a toast. To Max, the dog who changed the galaxy. They all drank to that, and Max's tail wagged, pleased by all the attention even if he didn't understand why he was getting it. Later that night, Jake walked through the station with Max. They were stopped every few meters by aliens who wanted to see the famous dog, to ask. 6 months had passed since the hearing that changed everything. Tertis Station had transformed in ways both subtle and profound. Where once the corridors were filled only with delegates and diplomats moving with purpose, now there were other sounds. Laughter, casual conversation, and occasionally the click of claws on metal floors as companion animals accompanied their humans through the station. Jake Morrison walked through the main plaza with Max, no longer drawing shocked stares. The dog was a familiar sight now, recognized by almost everyone on the station. Small alien children would approach cautiously, asking permission to pet him. Max had become something of a celebrity, and he handled it with his usual patient grace. The human delegation had grown. Earth had sent additional staff to establish a permanent embassy. Cultural attachés, scientists, teachers, and more security personnel had arrived. But the core team remained the same. Jake, Amy, Danny, and Lisa had become the face of humanity to the galaxy, and they took that responsibility seriously. Commander Morrison, a voice called out. It was Telina, the Saurian maintenance worker who had been one of the first to support them. She approached with another Saurian Jake didn't recognize, younger and smaller. I want you to meet someone. This is my daughter, Kierna. She begins her education at the Council Academy next month. The young Saurian looked at Max with wide eyes. Is it true he saved your life? Jake smiled. It is. Best friend I've ever had. I want to study Earth biology, Kierna said shyly. Dr. Grant said she would sponsor my application to the exchange program. She'll be going to Earth next year, Telina said proudly. Because of you and Max, my daughter dreams of stars and friendship between species. You gave her hope that the galaxy can be more than just logic and duty. After they left, Amy joined Jake. She was carrying a datapad filled with messages from Earth. You need to see this. The Council's cultural exchange program has been flooded with applications. Every major university on Earth wants to host alien visitors, and more than 20 species have requested information about companion animal programs. 20? Jake was amazed. Last month it was only 5. Zarael's report changed minds, Amy explained. She spent 3 months studying human-animal bonds, remember? Her findings were pretty revolutionary. She concluded that species with strong companion animal traditions show higher rates of cooperation, innovation, and social stability. Danny approached from the security office, his expression troubled. "We've got a situation. Chirix is causing problems again. He's been filing complaints about every little thing. Noise violations because someone's dog barked. Safety concerns because a cat walked through a diplomatic meeting. He's determined to undermine the new policies." "He's not going to give up," Jake said. "He genuinely believes emotional bonds are dangerous." "Then we keep proving him wrong," Danny said firmly. "Every day, every interaction, we show the galaxy what these bonds can do." The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor to the human embassy. Grondar, the Krell who had orchestrated the original incident, requested a meeting. Danny was immediately suspicious, but Jake agreed to see him. They met in a neutral conference room with Max present, but Danny stationed nearby just in case. Grondar looked older than Jake remembered. The bear-like alien's fur had more gray in it, and his eyes seemed tired. He sat heavily in a chair designed for his large frame and was quiet for a long moment. "I owe you an apology," Grondar said finally. His rough voice was subdued. "What I did was wrong. I let my prejudice and political ambition cloud my judgment. I tried to hurt you and your people because I feared what you represented." Jake studied him carefully. "What changed?" "My son," Grondar said quietly. "He is young, only 12 by your counting. He heard about your dog, about the trial, about everything that happened. He asked me questions I could not answer. Why did I try to hurt a creature that was only protecting its family? Why was I afraid of humans showing love?" The Krell's massive hands clenched. "I had no good answers. Only excuses. My son looked at me differently after that. With disappointment, I realized I had become exactly what I claimed to oppose, cruel, unjust, ruled by fear rather than wisdom." "I don't know what to say," Jake admitted. "Say nothing," Grondar replied. "I do not deserve forgiveness. I simply wanted you to know that you were right. About bonds, about love, about what makes a civilization worth preserving. The Krell have forgotten these things. Perhaps it is not too late to remember." After Grondar left, Jake sat in silence with Max. The dog nudged his hand, and Jake scratched behind his ears absently. Even the worst opposition could change. Even the hardest hearts could soften. It was a hopeful thought. The evening brought a gathering that had become weekly tradition. The embassy hosted an open house where anyone from the station could visit, meet the humans, and interact with Max and the other animals that had arrived from Earth. Lisa had brought her cat, an orange tabby named Newton. Another staff member had a rabbit. These simple creatures had become ambassadors in their own right. Peltic arrived early, as he always did. The young Saurian had completed his Earth exchange and returned transformed. He spent 3 months living with a family in Colorado who raised dogs for search and rescue work. He had learned to hike in mountains to understand pack dynamics and to appreciate the depth of connection possible between species. "I have news," Peltic announced excitedly. "The Saurian Council has approved a pilot program. We are bringing dogs to our homeworld. Just a few at first, but it is a beginning." "That's wonderful," Lisa said. She had grown close to Peltic during his time on Earth. "Do you have families selected?" "Yes, and I will oversee the program personally. We must move slowly. Help my people understand what they have been missing, but I believe it will work. Your species proved that different kinds of intelligence can complement each other beautifully." Throughout the evening, aliens of various species came through the embassy. Some were regulars who came every week. Others were new visitors, curious about the humans and their animals. A luminary couple brought their 3 children, who spent an hour playing gently with Max under careful supervision. A Vextar scientist discussed his research into interspecies communication. A group of young delegates from minor species asked endless questions about Earth, about animals, about how to build bridges between different kinds of life. Late in the evening, after most visitors had left, Zarel arrived. The High Administrator had become a regular visitor, though she usually came late when the crowds were smaller. She still struggled with the concept of casual interaction, but she was learning. Max recognized her immediately and walked over, tail wagging. Zarel knelt down, her movements careful, and Max sat patiently while she ran her glowing hand through his fur. "He trusts so easily," Zarel said softly. "Even though my species has no history with his, even though I am strange to him, He simply accepts. That's what makes dogs special, Jake said. They see potential for friendship in everyone. I envy that, Zarel admitted. The Luminari are so cautious, so controlled. We calculate the risk in every interaction. But your dog does not calculate. He simply loves. She stood, and there was something almost like sadness in her voice. I have been researching Luminari history. Did you know we once had companion animals? Thousands of years ago, before we achieved spaceflight. They were called Lyra, creatures somewhat like your dogs in temperament if not appearance. We gave them up in the name of progress. Could you bring them back? Amy asked. Perhaps. There are still wild populations on our homeworld. It would take time, patience, and a willingness to change our entire social structure. But after seeing what you have with Max, after understanding what we lost, I believe it might be worth trying. Zarel looked at Jake directly. You asked us once if we would do what Max did, if we would sacrifice for a bond without practical value. I finally have an answer. Not yet, but we want to learn how. Will you help us? Always, Jake promised. The weeks continued to pass, and the changes spread. More species began questioning their assumptions about emotion and connection. Academic papers were published examining the benefits of interspecies bonds. Young people from across the galaxy came to Earth to study animal behavior and human psychology. A quiet revolution was happening, one built on the foundation of a simple truth that Max had demonstrated. Love was not weakness. Connection was not primitive. And the bonds between beings were worth preserving. Jake stood in the council chamber one afternoon delivering a report on the cultural exchange program. The chamber was different now. Delegates listened with genuine interest rather than barely concealed contempt. Some asked thoughtful questions. A few shared their own species' relationships with other life forms, relationships they had never thought to mention before. After the session, Velkoth approached. The Saurian ambassador had become a true friend over the months. Commander Morrison, the Council is considering a proposal. We would like to offer Earth full membership, not just provisional status. The vote will happen next month. Jake felt his heart race. Full membership? Already? You have earned it, Velkoth said simply. Your people have brought something to this council that we desperately needed. Compassion. Openness. A reminder that advancement of technology is meaningless without advancement of heart.